if we can observe 2 minutes of silence. Today also is the death anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. And I think it's only apt if we can just observe 1 minute's silence. Mahatma Gandhi gave us the message of love, truth, and non-violence, just not to India, but to the world. And even in his last moments, he stood for communal harmony and peace. Today, we mark his death anniversary, but his legacy continues in our hearts and in our ethos. Thank you. Memorial lecture, but just very briefly that we have a series of memorial lectures in the memory of Dr. Asghar Ali, engineer. This is the 27th, and we have had 26 memorial lectures before this by eminent scholars including Romila Thapar, Thomas Blom Hansen, Professor Jeffrey Lott, Professor Pratap Bhanu Mehta, Professor Irfan Habib, and others. It's not possible to name all 26, but them adding some very important insights into contemporary issues of democracy and secularism. We are ever so grateful to them. Another activity that we have is the Dr. Asghar Ali Engineer Lifetime Achievement Award, which was in fact in December bestowed upon Anand Patwardhan, the filmmaker. We are all aware of him. Before that, it was given to Advocate Indra Jaising, and posthumously on Stan Swami and Justice Suresh Hospit. That is one more way we would like to encourage and respect the legacy of Dr. Asghar Ali Engineer. We also give away the Best Published Paper Award to young scholars who contribute to the areas that Dr. Asghar Ali Engineer was very passionate about. Those were the Bhora reforms, communal harmony, rights of women in Quran, and secularism, of course. It's also important that when we are talking about Dr. Asghar Ali Engineer and his legacy, we remember that he not only, on his own, he was of course a pioneer who went around documenting important riots that took place in India, even when he was actually an engineer with the Bombay Municipal Corporation. But he is a pioneer because he in-depth analysis of riots when there were no media and no media houses covering riots 24/7. I think we all have kind of grown up reading his literature and the many books he has written. To have a more institutionalized response to the Bombay riots in '93, one of his contributions was also the founding of the Center for Study of Society and Secularism. And in whatever humble way we can, the center still continues his legacy by continuing documentation, going on fact findings, bringing out reports, raising awareness about the riots, and bringing out the truth behind those riots. We also continue doing trainings on freedom of religion or belief, constitution, secularism, trying to reach out to youth, to activists, to civil society organizations, and try to build capacities, and of course create dialogue around these issues. It seems simplistic, but today where spaces are shrinking to really speak about these issues or use certain words like secularism, I think this effort has to go on. We are also committed to interfaith engagements. That's why we are part of the Interreligious Solidarity Council. Some friends from there are present here, which also believes in promoting dialogue in an interfaith manner. As one of the activities of, as part of IRSC, we also organize the Mumbai Parliament of Religions. And of course, the memorial activities and lectures. So this was about CSSS, and I'm very, very happy to speak a bit about that. I would like to now invite Wahid Muqaddam, who, do we have Wahid here? Yes. Wahid is an old friend of Dr. Asghar Ali Engineer. He's actually come all the way from the US, where he's been a scientist. and of course has very fond memories and now a friend of the center. So please, to speak a few words about Dr. Asghar Ali Engineer.
Thank you very much. I don't think I can add any more about what Asghar Ali stood for, what the Institute stands for and continues to do. I'm sorry. Thank you. And that's why mine is going to be much more personal, my personal interaction with him. I'm of course humbled to be on this side of the stage. I should be sitting in the back row somewhere with such an august company, people who have accomplished a lot more than I have. After Irfan Bhai called me and requested that I say a few words about Asghar Bhai, I immediately called a common friend, some of you might know him, Dr. Vinod Bubai, who like me lives in the United States, to inquire whether is it possible that he might come here in time for this for this function. Vinod, who's also my mentor, was very close to Asghar Ali Bhai. A friendship which started in 1969 and was so profound that it has sort of seamlessly transferred over to Irfan Bhai and Sandhya, okay, as if there's no generational difference. So I'm just merely a stand-in for him, and as you shall soon discover, I'm not much of a public speaker. I'll try. Okay. Their friendship began in 1971 or 69, sorry, which is also about the time I met Asghar Bhai. I too had returned to India with lofty aspirations and to change the world and so on. But my naivete and desire to soak in all the knowledge that these two and number of others like them were able to share with me. So there's a Marathi word for it. It's called a sheput. It actually means a tail. So that's what I became. So I followed them everywhere. I just was there all the time, listening to what these people had to say and teach me. We spent countless hours at a tea shop near PBH. Some of you might know what that is. PBH stood for People's Publication House, I guess. It sort of at one time belonged to the CPI. And it was a favorite hangout of the left at that time. And a lot of progressive politics was discussed there. And by definition, progressive politics and the discussion about progressive politics cannot be narrowly defined. I'm also like Asghar Ali, I'm an engineer, I'm not a social scientist. But for those of you who are not aware of these things, it's quite amazing to me when I think back on it, how a political discussion would quickly move over without any space in between to Urdu shairi and art. and both of them would be quoting sher shairi, as if they were reading of a book. Okay, it's difficult to trace how we finish the so-called pani kam chai in these tiny cups, and the discussion would go from Leninism back to Faiz and Sahir and so on and so forth. Okay, or sideways to issues of Muslim personal law, or perhaps something simple as what morcha are we going to join tomorrow. Okay, that was all happened within, I think, more cups of tea than I care to remember. On a larger time scale, only slightly larger time scale, we have to be amazed that Asghar Ali, who was, as has been mentioned, as some of you know, he was a civil engineer. And in the afternoon, he would be holding a seminar on how to manage large civil projects, okay, and use critical path methods, also called CPM. And in the evening, he would come back and tell us about what the other CPM was doing or not doing or should be doing. And all of that just seemed like natural to him. It's very difficult in these days of specialization where, and I know a number of engineers who seem proud of the fact that they have outsourced politics. And in democracy, you cannot outsource politics, as you all know, okay? Because you get outsourced soon if you outsource politics. So it was with special fondness that I remember Asghar Ali and my friendship with him. Okay. We were critical of Indira Gandhi, Nehru, and people like that. The same Indira Gandhi who, I think we'll be speaking soon, in the preamble added the word secularism and socialism and called it, the socialist secular democratic republic. In Urdu it would be called jiska wada tha. That was what our promise was. And we were critical of how she or the ruling party diluted that promise. But that critical, now that I hear the present criticism of Nehru's and Gandhi, it was very different. We criticized Nehru for statements like, the public sector will be the umbrella over capitalism. Yes, it was a very objectionable statement for us, but that's not the level of criticism, or that's not the discourse we see today. But that's another matter. For me, personally, and I started this by saying I was going to be personal about it, those were very joyous times. And I'm not sure joyous is the correct word for it, because after all, we were talking about the anguish and the anguish and the of the dispossessed. We were talking about how to improve that, and yet to be joyous about it seems like an odd thing to be doing. But I was also taught by the same people that without that joy and without that love, you could not be effective. Now, some of us may find that odd, but that's the way it was. Okay. I have a few copies of the write-up Vinod sent me. So what I did was I called Vinod and said, so he sent me a copy. I have a few copies. I'll ask Irfan Bhai to post them. It's much longer and it's far more personal than I could be. But somehow I felt for this gathering, what are our fond memories may not be the most relevant part, but those of you who are interested in Asghar Bhai should really read this. It's a beautiful piece that he wrote, okay? And I recommend that you read it. But as I thought of Asghar Ali and people of that age, I said, why do we celebrate? Why do we gather here and talk about civic leaders like him? Okay? What's so special about them? And what is special, and I'll like I said, I'm not a social scientist, but I'll put it in two simple words: knowledge and compassion for the poor. Okay? Why are these two things important? Because back of our mind, it would be, I would say, irresponsible for me, to not recognize the state we are in today. Okay? And why is knowledge and compassion are different, are important concepts? Knowledge, because ignorance has become a virtue now. Okay? It's amazing that that's what it is. Okay? That when knowledge by itself is absence of ignorance in itself is just absence of knowledge. It's a void. The question is, what is this void filled with? So when you have people ruling us, in charge of outsized defense and war budgets, okay, have the ability to dictate what that void is filled with. Okay? With the compromised institutions, especially the media, we are now facing a situation where this void is filled with hatred and hatred for the other. So we are living through a very dangerous times. Okay? This lack of this ignorance allows them to amass a large army of people. Some are state actors, and I come from the US, as I've said, are doing amazing, unbelievable stuff. You could not imagine that this could be done in a democracy, in a modern democracy. Okay? But that is done. And it's not, and it is supported by not an insignificant number. And as of us, all of us know here what is happening here too. Okay, so this is something of concern to us. Okay. Nonetheless, these were. I should just go back to what I was talking about. So yes, so knowledge and so this army that they can then collect completes the equation that I'm talking about. Ignorance and cruelty. Because cruelty is a part of that. Arbitrariness is part of this cruelty. You cannot exercise cruelty if we as citizenry and if we as the owner of this democracy understood what the rules of the game were, but the rules keep changing. Okay? And the arbitrariness and the cruelty is the point. There is no other point. The point is to be cruel. Point is to send a message of cruelty. Okay? And so he said, oh, that's bad. But no, that is what the point is. That is the agenda. I don't think they have another larger agenda than that. Okay? I'll essentially stop at this, but I just want to finish a couple of things. Coming back to Asghar Ali, this man is difficult to talk about him without getting emotional. He did this at tremendous personal cost to himself and his loved ones. Okay? And this included physical attacks. And the various attacks, physical attacks, that Asghar Ali had to face. He was giving a speech in a very large rally in Hyderabad. And I'm not sure whether a knife was involved or not, but he was attacked there. He was attacked in Bombay airport in front of the police and the security personnel, and as far away as places as Cairo. But that did not deter him. These people who were attacking him did not realize what a strong fighter he was. Okay? It just made him strong. Okay? He never compromised his principles and what he was going. Not announce. Okay? And I wish that realized that. I have had several arguments with Asghar Ali, and including, I remember he published an article on common civil code and reform within the Muslim community, and I had some problems with it. But as recently in an article in the Indian Express by Najib Jung and Hilal Ahmad, neither of whom I don't know them, they compellingly proved how correct Asghar Ali was. And that was 50 years ago, sir. Okay? So, now I sort of talk in this sort of past tense, but I really not for a moment do I want to suggest that today's generation or today's people are not doing what we would like them to do. Okay? I have my baby sister sitting there somewhere in the back, Farida Lambe, and Irfan Bhai, etc., etc. I think they are far more effective than we were, and I hope that they would succeed in what they are doing. Okay. So, no matter how dark the times may seem, I think Asghar Ali has inspired us to keep fighting. My Urdu is not good enough to recite what Faiz has said about how the road is kind of topsy-turvy or curvy, etc. So instead, I'll use a quote from a labor activist from the 1930s, from the Great Depression. When Reagan got elected in 1980, this man who himself was in wheelchair, had both his legs were amputated. I mean, he had all kinds. I mean, you find it hard-pressed. How can this man be so positive? And he said something that has stayed with me, because it described to me so he said, I've had too many kidney stones not to believe that this too shall pass. With that thought, I will leave you. Thank you. And thank you, Irfan Bhai, to call me.
Thank you, Vaid Bhai. And yes, you have captured how we knew Dr. Asghar Ali Engineer. Infinitely compassionate, but yes, joyous and very optimistic. I know an entire generation or generations that have grown up reading him, being trained by him. So I'm one of them. So yes, thank you so much for encapsulating that. I would not want to keep this very enthusiastic audience away from two wonderful speakers, but it's my duty to invite Dia, my colleague from CSSS, to very briefly introduce the speaker and the chair. They need no introduction. They are stalwarts and honestly inspiration in these dark. Again, I need to be a little more optimistic too in these times, but it's just something we have to do. So we introduce them very briefly and not keep you away from the lecture. So, Dia.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege today to very briefly introduce our speaker and our chair. First up, our speaker, Advocate Dushyant Dave, who is a senior advocate at the Supreme Court of India, who's practiced law for over 4 decades. Advocate Dave has, over the course of his career, been involved in some of the most consequential and constitutional cases of our time. Beyond individual cases, he has also served the legal profession itself with distinction as the former president of the Supreme Court Bar Association. What sets Mr. Dave apart is not only his mastery of the law, but also the moral clarity with which he approaches it. It is therefore especially fitting that he addresses us today, as memorial lectures are meant not only just to remember, but to reflect, question, and renew our commitment to the ideals that we hold dear. We are deeply honored to have him with us today, and we look forward to his insights. Please join me in welcoming Advocate Dushyant Dave. Next up is our chair, Senior Advocate Aspi CHINOÜ. Advocate CHINOÜ is one of the most senior advocates of the Bombay High Court and Supreme Court, with over 4 decades of experience at the bar since commencing practice in 1977. He is widely known for his work in constitutional law, commercial litigation, and public interest matters. In addition to court litigation, he has also participated in numerous domestic and international arbitrations, bringing a disciplined and principled approach to complex commercial disputes. He is also particularly known for his emphasis on factual clarity and legal precision in advocacy. Please join me in welcoming Advocate Aspi CHINOÜ as the chair for today's lecture.
Thank you, Dia, for meeting the brief introductions. And with this, without any further ado, I invite Advocate Dushyant Dave to please address us.
Good evening, everybody. Mr. Aspi CHINOÜ, the indomitable lawyer, a very dear friend, and the chair of this evening's function. Irfan Bhai here, Justice Gokhale, Majid Bhai, Mihir Desai, the constant thorn for those who are violating human rights in this country. Extremely distinguished gathering here, respected ladies, gentlemen, young student friends, and of course the youngest friend, the child right at the back with his mother. I'm sure he has come because he had no other option but to be with the mother. But I can only say one thing, young man, that you alone have the right to sleep through my lecture. Thank you very much for inviting me to this memorial lecture. It's a great privilege and honor, also a pleasure. Irfan Bhai, I went through the life story. I never had the privilege of meeting late Mr. Asghar Ali. but I can definitely say that he was one of the greatest Indians who lived in this country. And therefore, it gives me an immense joy to be here in his memory, to stand here before you and speak. The Constitution as envisioned by its framers and its contemporary interpretation. I think this topic was perhaps slightly wrongly chosen. I would like, with the permission of the chair, to modify it to Constitution as envisaged by its framers and its contemporary misinterpretations. We must remember one thing. Constitution is a way of life. And if you keep that in mind, it's a way of life for a nation. And therefore, we have to envision what was envisioned by our framers and what is it that we are seeing around us today. Then we realize, how the life has changed from what was, expected to be. But this is not my thinking alone. Dr. Ambedkar, the great visionary, I call him a prophet. On 4th of November 1948, he has these words to say. While everybody recognizes the necessity of the diffusion of constitutional morality for the peaceful working of a democratic constitution, there are two things interconnected with it which are not, unfortunately, generally recognized. One is that the form of administration has a close connection with the form of the constitution. Now this is very important. Form of the constitution has a close connection with the form of the constitution. The form of the administration must be appropriate to and in the same sense as the form of the constitution. Now he wants. The other is that it is perfectly possible to pervert the constitution without changing its form by merely changing the form of the administration and to make it inconsistent and opposed to the spirit of the Constitution. Now that's why I call him a prophet. 4th of November 1948, this man had the vision of India in 2026. And that's what he really said. Current scenario proves him right, according to me. But why was Ambedkar so skeptical about future of India 78 years ago? Because he felt that there was complete absence of constitutional morality, not amongst the majority of any community, but throughout the whole. By constitutional morality, he meant a paramount reverence for the forms of the Constitution. Einstein had once said that you must be prepared to die for the Constitution, every citizen. That's the kind of a feeling, that's the kind of a constitutional reverence which Ambedkar had in mind. It must be combined with right to open speech, of action subject to definite legal controls, and unrestrained censure of those very authorities as to their public acts. Now all this is completely missing today. We are today living, unfortunately, in a country where I say many a times jokingly that our power of rational thinking has been taken away and our courage has been taken away somehow. So that's something which is very troublesome, and Ambedkar was aware about this. He was of the opinion that constitutional morality is not a natural sentiment, but it must be cultivated, as he felt that our people have yet to learn it. He bitterly said, democracy in India is only a top dressing of an Indian soil, which is essentially undemocratic. Look at this man. 1948, he's telling this. We have all forgotten. Have we cultivated that feeling, that sentiment after 7 decades? In my respectful submission, no. But I may be wrong, because I have extremely hard views. While 1975 to 1977 was a declared emergency by Mrs. Gandhi, and we must all condemn it. Today we are witnessing since 2014 an undeclared emergency, and there is no end in sight of that emergency. And this is something which is extremely serious today, because we all have to ponder, we all have to introspect. that what's wrong, what's happening in the country. We must speak about it, we must feel, the pain that people are suffering, we must express ourselves, we must help people if we can. And we must gather the strength that likes of Mr. Aspi CHINOÜ and Mr. Mihir Desai reflect in courts today. I must say with great sense of regret that both the bench, with great respect to Justice Gokhale, who was one of our finest judges, both the bench and the bar have failed to stand up for people. And this is something which really is very important. Framers had chosen parliamentary democracy very advisedly over presidential form of government. What we are witnessing is today extra presidential form of government, because they preferred more responsibility to more stability. In parliamentary democracy, the assessment of responsibility of the executive they wanted was to be both daily and periodic. The daily assessment was to be done by members of parliament through questions, resolutions, no confidence motions, adjournment motions, debates on addresses. Do we see that today in our parliament? All that we see is walkouts and shouting. The whole purpose of parliamentary democracy is being defeated, something far from what was envisaged by the framers. Periodic assessment is done by electorate at the time of election, which may take place every 5 years or earlier. Unfortunately, elections are also throwing a lot of question marks on us, and the current exercise of revision, SIR, is creating more, because there are almost 3.5 crore Indians who are already declared to be non-citizens, 1.5 crore in UP alone, which is very shocking. I mean, and the Supreme Court is not able to stand up to this kind of a fraudulent exercise which is taking place across the country. But the whole purpose is very clear. Ambedkar thought that parliamentary executive being more dependent upon a majority in parliament becomes more responsible. How wrong he was. How wrong he was. He thought parliamentary executive being more dependent upon majority in parliament becomes more responsible. Today, the majority in parliament has made the executive much more irresponsible, because they can get away with anything. Today there is neither a daily independent assessment nor periodic majority in parliament thinks, because the periodic majority in parliament thinks it must be subservient to the government or the party. I mean, it is unthinkable that today, because you have been elected on a ticket of a particular party, you cannot speak against it, you cannot stand up against it, you cannot question it. That's not what democracy is supposed to be. So that's what has happened today. Irrespective of how unconstitutional or illegal government behaves, these members don't question a single thing in parliament. They stand up and shout in one voice, supporting the government in unison, and remain silent to all the wrongs that take place in day-to-day administration. Opposition is equally to be blamed in failing to conduct itself in a meaningful and responsible manner. They are just not able to corner the government for its omissions and commissions through daily assessments. Walkouts and shoutings are hardly going to help them keep democracy vibrant and secure. And believe you me, the constitutional framers debated on the role of opposition for a number of hours. And they felt that the opposition had a great role to play. In fact, one member, I forget his name, one member went to the extent of saying that any government which is against the opposition is an undemocratic government, and that government has no right to survive. Now that was the level of democratic values that the framers had in mind, how parliamentary democracy should function. Resultantly, government today can pass any law that it wishes, mostly without serious debates in parliament. For example, farm laws. The farm laws were passed without any debate. They were withdrawn without any debate, because the Sikhs had the courage to stand up against them. Unfortunately, the other communities have not shown that courage. CAA protest did muster some courage. But hats off to the Sikh community, which forced government of Mr. Modi to bend backwards. And that's something which is to be noticed. Very few people have realized how relevant and how important that struggle was. I can say with great sense of joy and pride that the farm leaders were acting under my legal advice. and me and Mr. Fulka and Prashant Bhushan were talking to them almost on a daily basis in my chamber. I even went where the farm leaders were agitating and saw their spirit and their anxiety as to what these farm laws will do. They were worried that if the farm laws were passed, the big businesses will take over. Because some of the largest, companies of this country had started acquiring warehouses with capacity to, hold hundreds of tons, thousands of tons of, farm produce. And what they would do is that they will keep it stored there. And next year when the crop is, very good, they will release it in such a way that the prices are brought down. So they were extremely worried about it. The laws, for example, on a serious note, CAA in 2019, Citizenship Amendment Act, the new criminal laws which are passed in 2023, the UAPA Act in 2019, the NCT Amendment Act 2023, J&K Reorganization Act 2019, Waqf Amendment Act 2025, Digital Data Protection Act 2023, Electoral Bond Scheme through Finance Act. These are some of the examples where majoritarianism has, agreed to suppress the fundamental and legal rights of citizens by passing these laws. And most of these laws seriously, according to me, and the chair perhaps would agree with me, suffer from serious constitutional infirmities. And yet, the Supreme Court has had no time to either hear them, much less decide them in a particular manner. And this is something which is really a matter of great concern for us, because Supreme Court was supposed to be the ultimate, protector of our fundamental rights. More serious is the fallout of these laws. The executive, through investigating agencies and police in BJP-ruled states, is seriously endangering liberty and freedoms of citizens in many ways. From fake encounters to bulldozer demolitions, from wrongful arrests under draconian laws like UAPA, arresting critics and stand-up comedians, and for criticism of government and its leaders, have turned constitutional dreams into nightmares. Attacks on opposition leaders by misusing agencies like ED are meant to convert India into opposition Mukt Bharat. And I can assure you they will achieve this very quickly. It's not too far off. We have seen what is happening. State after state, the opposition is being marginalized. One ED director, for example, got 3 extensions in complete violation of constitutional norms and rules of business. And in fact, they passed a law for extension of his tenure when Supreme Court decided that he should no longer get an extension, which was very shocking. As against this, members of the ruling party are never investigated, much less arrested, perhaps because they all stand purified like Ganga Snan once they wear a saffron scarf. We know how many of them in Maharashtra politics have benefited by that. Many questionable politicians with pending cases have also been purified after wearing those scarves. Is this what the framers had envisaged? In my view, no. If the form of the government is modified, M-O-D-I, Modi. If the form of the government is modified, what about the form of the constitution? Framers chose a federal constitution over unitary constitution with the fond hope of existence of center and the state side by side, and each being sovereign in its own jurisdiction. India to have federation with uniformity in all basic matters to ensure unity. That was the goal. Yes, under the constitution, center has greater powers in special and emergent times, but in normal times, states enjoy full freedom and as per subjects assigned to them. Ambedkar describes this very beautifully. He says, one can therefore safely say that the Indian Federation will not suffer the faults of rigidity or legalism. Its distinguishing feature is that it is a flexible federation. Now this is what today we are saying. However, what is being witnessed in last decade or so is an all-out assault on states through many subtle and some direct moves. If the Congress governments abused Article 356 to dismiss opposition-related state governments right from the 1950s, I mean, even late Jawaharlal Nehru resorted to it, and Mrs. Gandhi resorted to it on many occasions. For over 5 decades, BJP government today has discovered ingenious way to do so and stifle the states. BJP government is using the governors. Doesn't need 356. From not approving laws passed by duly elected legislatures, in total negation of democracy for indefinite periods, to interfering in law and order and educational institutions, these governors have become law unto themselves. They are partisan in discharging their constitutional role and misuse their discretions on a daily basis. Framers had expected them to be sagacious counselors. Ambedkar was categorical on their position. Governor has no function which is required to discharge either in his discretion or in his individual judgment, and that he must act on ministerial advice is what Ambedkar wanted, and this is what the constitutional framers had wanted. Today, these governors don't listen to the ministerial advice at all. They have their own advice which comes from Delhi, from the Home Ministry, and they act on them on a daily basis. We see that. It's happening in Tamil Nadu, it's happening in West Bengal, it's happening in Jharkhand, it's happening in many states. And it's very unfortunate that this constitutional position, which was supposed to be merely a link between the center and the states, is now being abused in this fashion. The central government has thus succeeded in subduing states, if not preventing them from success in their execution of their policies and actions. See, every political party, let's take an opposition party in Tamil Nadu or West Bengal, they have been elected by electorate because of their policies which they have declared in their manifestos. And they would like to execute these policy decisions by various laws. Now, if the governor is going to sit on the laws passed by the assembly, then they cannot execute their policies. They cannot achieve their objectives. So it becomes extremely, extremely difficult for these political parties to succeed in their objectives. And this is how the party in power, ruling party in power at the center, can easily defeat the opposition parties which are able to gain some headway in few states in the country. Second, in financial matters, the states have been stifled, especially after the introduction of GST. I don't know whether you are aware or not, but as Chief Minister, Mr. Modi opposed GST for almost 10 years. At one stage, he said, "Over my dead body." Today, the GST is being abused left, right, and center because the state's powers to levy sales taxes has been taken away. So states are really virtually left with only one source of income, prohibition, which unfortunately Gujarat doesn't have because it all goes into the pockets of police officers and politicians. But otherwise, states have a substantial excise duty revenue. But that's not sufficient. Now, what happens is that it is the finance ministry which has to release the funds to the states as per their demands, as per what has been agreed upon discussion between center and particular state. But it's not being released. Every opposition state today is crying for release of those funds which they are entitled to. But the government sits over it. So this is something which is really now another way of stifling the states. Complete negation of federalism. The framers wanted federalism in a true sense. This happens also surprisingly in BJP-ruled states, because today BJP-ruled states are not governed by the local leaders. We all know that BJP-ruled states are governed by the Prime Minister's office. I mean, if any chief minister today in a BJP-ruled state can say that I can take a particular decision and act on it, then I think he might be removed on the next day. So, today, every decision which is to be taken, major decision, has to be approved by the Prime Minister's office. And states are therefore, I mean, even in the BJP state, democracy is virtually non-existent. Yes, the leaders are elected, there is a chief minister, there is a council of ministers, but there is very little role that they can independently play. Now, this is a way of, killing the federalism. And It is virtually turning the country into presidential form of the government, which is exactly what Ambedkar and his colleagues did not want. They specifically chose parliamentary democracy over presidential form of government to bring more responsibility. We are becoming a nation where power is now concentrated in the center with complete irresponsibility. There is no accountability, there is no responsibility. So it's something which we all must ponder about. Constitutions working, therefore, in my view, is not what was envisioned by the leaders. The biggest concerning reason is, of course, today, for these failures of both the form of the government and form of the constitution, is the judiciary. I have been a lawyer for 48 years. My father has been a judge. I respect judiciary. I love judiciary. I enjoyed my time there. But I must say that the single biggest factor for state of affairs today is judiciary. Because judiciary was created as a checks and balance over the executive and the parliament. And it is singularly failing to check either one of them. Judiciary was created for protecting the constitutional and fundamental rights of the citizens. It has singularly failed to protect them. So, it's something which we must ponder about. We must see what the framers really, why did they want an independent judiciary? Framers gave us independent judiciary, keeping it away as much as possible from the control of the executive in appointment and finances. Kanayal al-Munshi, the great academician, lawyer, and a novelist, puts it very beautifully when he said, it is essential that in democracy, the judiciary must be there to adjust the differences between the citizen and citizen, between the state, and between the government and the state. If that independence is not secured, I am sure we would soon drift towards totalitarianism. Look at the framers' anxiety. These were greatest men and women ever to be born. And they were afraid for today's India. They were afraid for us. So he says we will drift towards totalitarianism. Independence of judiciary, he said, demarcates the line between democratic method and totalitarian method. How true those words are. We are fast becoming a totalitarian nation without anybody acknowledging it, without anybody admitting it, and much less without debating it. Mr. Iyengar, one of the distinguished members, called Supreme Court the foundation stone of our liberty. Dr. Ambedkar intervening said, sir, there is no doubt that the House in general has agreed that independence of judiciary from executive should be made as clear and definite as we could make it by law. Ambedkar didn't realize that it would be so easy to bend the judiciary. He thought by law he could keep the independence of judiciary. Little did he realize that 75 years later, how we will be as Indians and how we will succumb to every pressure. How we will be willing to convert the power, into the hands of the few. I mean, it's really, he never could have imagined those, because, they had sacrificed. Our generation, I'm sorry, some of you are pre-1947, but those of us who are born after 1947 have no respect for freedom struggle. We don't care a damn about the sacrifices made by thousands and thousands and thousands of Indians in terms of their lives, their liberties, their peace of mind, their resources. We have forgotten them completely. And unless we remember them, we will never be able to appreciate democracy. Democracy, constitution is a revolutionary product. It was a revolution by peaceful means. Mahatma Gandhi led. But those sacrifices, unless we remember them, talk about them, we will never appreciate the constitution. It's a Constituent Assembly was the final culmination of the independence struggle. And that produced this beautiful document after 3 years of debate. 3 years of debate. Rejecting apprehension that this would result in creating imperio, Ambedkar said we want to give judiciary ample independence so that it can act without fear or favor of the executive. I must say today, with great respect to the judiciary, including the Supreme Court, that they definitely act with fear and with favor. I make no bones about it. And you can see it. I mean, look at the way these two young students have been denied bail after 5 years. There is nothing in their case. If before an independent judge, that charge is bound to fail. And the Supreme Court says, no, we can't because national security is involved. I don't know how national security comes into play in this, while giving bail to the others. Whereas all those who actually were responsible for, about encouraging the riots, Minister Anurag Thakur, he said, Gaddaro ko goli maro. Member of Parliament, Mr. Mishra, said कि आपके घर में आकर रेप करेंगे, आप इनको मार दो, कल को मोदी और शाह नहीं होंगे तो क्या होगा हमारा. Mr. Yogi Adityanath repeatedly kept on saying कि ये बोली से नहीं गोली से सुनेंगे. No case against them, no investigation against them. And I mean, I can't believe that our judges are so naive that they want to, gloss over the reality of the situation in the country. It's a matter of great, disappointment, sadness for those of us who love judiciary. Because, 48 years we have Poker Sahib, one of the most respected members of the assembly, he feared. Look at his words. It is of the highest importance that judges of the Supreme Court should not be made to feel that their existence or their appointment is dependent upon political considerations or on the will of the political party. Of course, if a judge owes his appointment to a political party, certainly in the course of his career as a judge, also as an ordinary human being, he will certainly be bound to have some consideration for the political views of the authority that has appointed him. I mean, all we are seeing today, the kind of appointments which are being made in Supreme Court and High Court. It's so easy to understand why they bend backwards. Because they have been obliged and they therefore return the obligations. Many of them. Many of them. We have outstanding judges. We have had many outstanding judges. But I must say, since 1992, when judges grabbed the power to appoint judges in the second judge's judgment and created this farcical system called collegium system, they have made the worst of the appointments. And today we have none to criticize, because when government appointed bad judges, we could attack. With collegium, what do we do? So, I mean, it's really, and this phrase in the constitutional provision was clearly that President shall, in consultation with the Chief Justice of India, appoint. During the Constituent Assembly debate, member after member suggested, please paraphrase the word consult with concur. Ambedkar said no. He said, I am not willing to give that power to the Chief Justice, who is a man of many failings. So it was rejected. In second judge's judgment, Supreme Court says, no, the word should be concur. And therefore, the President must concur with the Chief Justice of India in appointments, in High Court and Supreme Court. And what have they done? They have made some of the worst appointments. Forget the, outstanding judges, which are far and few. So this Professor K.T. Shah, a very eminent member and a very vocal member in the Constituent Assembly debate. These debates are worth reading. Some of these members have made amazing contributions. He says, in my opinion, sir, if I may say so with all respect, this constitution concentrates so much power and influence in the hands of Prime Minister in regard to appointment of judges, ambassadors or governors to such an extent that there is every danger to apprehend that the Prime Minister may become a dictator if he chooses to do so. Look at this. Look at the wisdom that these people had, collective wisdom. Ambedkar says at the end, he says, it may sound to be a little arrogant, but he says that with all great respect to future parliament, I can definitely say that the wealth of knowledge, the wealth of experience that the constituent assembly members have, the future parliament will never possess that. And that's true. We don't have men and women of that integrity, that character, because they all were born out of freedom struggle. Current, parliamentarians are all born out of, hunger for power. They have not made any sacrifices. I don't know of anyone who has made sacrifices in politics, with due respect to my dear friend here. Nobody has made sacrifices. By and large, there are some exceptional people. So this is what Katie Shyatt feared, dictator. To my mind, and as time has proved again and again, this newly discovered power by Supreme Court for themselves have far from securing independence of High Courts and Supreme Courts, made them weak and fearful. Judiciary today is under great challenge. Supreme Court itself has forgotten its bounden duty to protect citizens against violations of their fundamental rights by exercising wider powers under Article 32, which according to Dr. Ambedkar was the heart and soul of the Constitution. Supreme Court is either declining to exercise its power or failing repeatedly in exercising it as per the Constitution. When I used to sit in Supreme Court, many a times the judges will tell that go to High Court under 226, don't come here under 32. Completely forgetting that Article 32 itself is a fundamental right. And if I am challenging an unconstitutional action, Supreme Court is bound to hear me. And Supreme Court has said so in some of the judgments in 50s and 60s. But all that is being lost sight of. And that's why I say that judiciary today has singularly failed us in this. Ambedkar had warned that if the parties put creed above country, our independence will be put in jeopardy a second time and probably be lost forever. If parties put creed above country, now I don't know any party which doesn't put creed above the country. They are all same, be it BJP, Congress, X, Y, Z. There is no political party which one can really feel proud of that it is really acting for the country, for the citizens, for us. You all seem to see that they are all, running around for power, for themselves and their brothers and their friends and relatives. He asked, what would happen to India's democratic constitution after 20th January 1950? He asked a rhetorical question to himself while, debating. Man was a genius. He answered saying, it's quite possible for this newborn democracy to retain its form, but give place to dictatorship in fact. Look at his words. He answered saying, it's quite possible for this newborn democracy to retain its form, but give place to dictatorship in fact. If there is a landslide, the danger of second possibility becoming actuality is much greater. You don't need a landslide now. You can easily purchase the opposition parties. So you didn't have, a landslide in 2024 election, but yet you are able to govern because everybody has succumbed. And everybody is sharing the spoils of the national wealth. It's easy to circumvent. But this is exactly what this man, great man, had feared, that we will lose our democracy. He forewarned against bhakti in politics. He was a very, very interesting man. He said bhakti is very good for salvation of the soul. But bhakti in politics is a sure path to dictatorship. We have bhakti all around us now in the country. We can see that. So he was against the hero worship. Perhaps he felt that Gandhi ji and Nehru, people worship them, and he didn't really like it. And you saw that Congress party had him defeated immediately after we became republic in 1950. It put up candidates against this great man and he lost elections. So it's not that power has consumed us today. Power has been consuming us since 1950, irrespective of a color of the political party. India today is far away in reality from what framers had envisioned, essentially on constitutional goals. This is very important. The constitutional framers were very clear. They said that you may have power, you may be elected in a parliamentary democracy, but you don't have right to govern this country as you like. You must be guided by certain objectives. So they put in the preamble these objectives: justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. These are the real goals for which every political party in power is expected to function. Justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Now, we see today that each one of these is under challenge. Each one of them. Justice, it's very difficult to say that with 5.5 crore cases pending and with at least 20 years of waiting in every case in court, you can get justice in this country. You can't get justice against the government, you can't get justice against a fellow citizen who has wronged you, you can't get justice in any form. Everybody is yearning for justice, whether he's a worker, whether he's a landlord, whether he's a farmer, whether he's a businessman, whether he's a citizen, whether he's a prisoner. Everybody is yearning for justice. But courts have no time to give that justice. And when they do give, it's seriously flawed. It's seriously flawed. Only recently, if you have read in the newspaper, that in 2002 September, a so-called terrorist attack took place on Akshardham in Gandhinagar. And in 2025, Supreme Court released the accused who were charged with conspiracy in that case. The so-called terrorists were gunned down during the attack, but all others who were charged have been released by the Supreme Court and subsequently by the trial court. Now just imagine how many years they have spent in jail from 2002, September. And the elections took place in December 2002, and of course it was a landslide. So, it's something which one must ponder, that is this what framers wanted? Justice is very important in a society which is governed by rule of law, a society where there is peace and harmony. For that, justice and justice delivery system must be most effective. We have failed. The framers wanted it. Equally, take liberty. If we can just pick up people like this, what liberty and life? If we can kill 600 people in UP in fake encounters without being questioned by the Human Rights Commission. One question I asked Human Rights Commission chairman again and again. They just have no answer. Supreme Court sits, its eyes wide shut. So does the High Court. Nobody cares. So who has decided that Mr. X should be killed? And people justify it. We have now reached a situation where I find again and again people talking to me and saying, oh, it's good, we have got rid of certain bad people. But who has decided these are bad people? Bring them to justice, bring them to court, let the court say that they are bad. And if the court feels that they are so bad that they deserve to be given death sentence or life sentence, be it. But if you are going to allow it to be decided by the politicians and the police, then I think the country is not safe. None of us are safe. Anybody can be picked up tomorrow and encountered. Now, is this what framers wanted? When they spoke of Article 21, life and liberty, they were very clear that it must be protected to the hilt by the judiciary. State cannot touch us. State cannot take away our liberty except in accordance with law. But today state does, aided by the judiciary, which is worse. Which is worse. Equality. 78 years. Today, look at the condition of Dalits in this country. Look at the condition of women. We are still a feudal nation. after 78 years of independence? Where do we have, just imagine that women who joined the armed forces had to fight for a permanent commission which they got in 2022. I fought some of those cases. And when those young women used to come to me and say how much they have sacrificed to join the armed forces, and they were being denied permanent commission because some men, thought that they should, women don't deserve permanent commission in the armed forces. So, Dr. Hansa Mehta in the Constituent Assembly had feared that for centuries we have treated our women very poorly. There have been no rights of these women. And I dare say that situation has not improved today. Go to villages, go to most homes, and their contribution is the most in a family. From morning to night, woman works for the family. So, equality, look at the status of the minority community today. What equality we are talking about if, today, in Gujarat, where I come from, every Muslim has to live only in certain ghettoed areas. I dare say even Azim Premji cannot buy a house where I have a house in Ahmedabad and Baroda. Somebody bought, a friend of mine sold a house in Baroda racecourse area to a good, very respected Muslim family. And after 1 month, they were forced to reverse the transaction. And the registrar was suspended. So Jains today say that in my building no non-Jain can purchase. Parsis say in my building no non-Parsi can come. And we Hindus say that all Muslims must be on one side of the cities, villages and towns. What equality we are talking about? Is this what, the sacrifices were made by the freedom fighters? Was there any distinction in the fight? There was no distinction. The Muslims and Hindus all fought side by side. And I proudly sometimes remind many friends in this country that it was under a Muslim ruler, Bahadur Shah Zafar, that 1857 mutiny was fought. And it's a sad commentary that the others did not come to his aid. It's a sad commentary. So, equality is something which is so essential in a society, which is singularly missing. Fraternity like that. According to Ambedkar, these were way of life. And he called, for example, liberty, equality and fraternity as a trinity. He said, you can't divorce one from the other. And if you divorce, it's a political disaster for the country. He said, liberty, equality and fraternity must all stand side by side. Is it so today in our country? We need to introspect. The whole purpose of this debates, Constituent Assembly debates, is to understand what was the nature of a nation that they had dreamt we should be. What did they want to create? It's not enough to say, we have 5,000 years of history. Of course we have 5,000 years of history. But what about our present? Why do we live in past glory when our present is so dismal, according to me? Yes, some of us are fortunate and we can enjoy a good life, etc. But if the government admits, Prime Minister repeatedly says proudly, कि मैं 81 करोड़ से ज़्यादा लोगों को मुफ्त राशन देता हूँ और मेरा वादा है कि अगले 5 साल तक मुफ्त राशन देता रहूँगा. What does it mean? That 70% people are living below poverty line. You are not trying to make them stand up on their feet by creating jobs, because you are incapable of creating jobs. Today, more than 200 million youth are sitting at home alone without jobs, boys and girls. But you can dole out. You have Ladli Bena, you have this Bena, you have that uncle, that auntie. Is this what we want? I was just telling Mr. CHINOÜ that Ambedkar advisedly did not agree to use of the expression socialism into a preamble, into the constitution. He neither wanted secularism nor socialism. It was Mrs. Gandhi which introduced them. But is this the kind of a socialism that we should be proud of? Or we want a socialism where we can create equal opportunities for all? That's equality. Article 39 of the Constitution, the directive principles, the framers were very clear that we want these directive principles to guide those in power. So some of the most important ones are that equal opportunities to all, equitable distribution of resources. I am not against Ambani and Adani, but you can't have Ambani and Adani when 100 crore people are living below poverty line. I mean, India today can boast of the highest number of billionaires in the world. I didn't know that. I saw the, some news item the other day. We have the highest number of billionaires in the world, side by side with these 100 crore people who are living below poverty line. What a contradiction. Now, this is something which is, very important for us to understand. What we don't have, we must remember, there is no freedom to be free in the real sense in this country. We must have freedom to be free. Unless we have that, there is a big problem. Today, freedom of speech, I mean, look at it. You criticize anybody. I mean, this is not to do with BJP alone. Mamta, if you criticize her, then somebody, police will come and arrest. You criticize Stalin, somebody will come and arrest. And Munshi used one beautiful sentence in his debate on freedom of speech. He says criticism is an essence of democracy. But our, kind politicians have forgotten that this is the essence of the democracy, the criticism. We have a right to criticize them. And if we stop criticizing, believe you me, we will be failing our forefathers who sacrificed for us, and we will be really losing the democracy that we all love. We must therefore stand up and criticize as much as we can. We have today, of course, freedom of speech, but after that speech, we have no freedom. So that's a contradiction we have today. Again, to quote Munshi, I love Munshi because, he was founder of the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. He was a great lawyer, and he has been one of the greatest novelists in the Gujarati language. Some of his books, Jai Somnath, Patani Prabhuta, are world class, absolutely world class. So, a man who had, Munshi says, we have unfortunately in this country legislatures with large majorities facing very serious problems, and naturally there is a tendency to pass legislation in a hurry which gives sweeping powers to the executive and the police. Imagine 78 years ago he said this. UAPA, CAA, just imagine. Supreme Court judgment giving ED, the, weaponizing ED. Justice Khanwilkar's great judgment. I mean, ED today can enter anybody's house and, do whatever they want to arrest anybody without any. Only thing they don't find the addresses of the BJP leaders, surprisingly. So, not surprising, but disturbing. Professor K.T. Shah puts it, liberty of the person, ever since the consciousness of civil liberties have come upon the people. Look at this man. Liberty of the person, ever since the consciousness of civil liberties have come upon the people, has been the main battleground of the autocrats and those fighting against them. The autocrat, the despot, has always wished, whenever he was bankrupt of any other argument, to shut up those who did not agree with him, and with slightest inconvenience and even embarrassment, to imprison or arrest without trial or charge. Does it not resonate with what is happening today? But Munshi envisioned it far from state being today. Is individual for the state or state for the individual? That's the question, political analysts always ask. We have converted our country, a state which lives for, rather than living for individual, has converted individuals to live for the state. It is a very sad commentary. State's existence is for us, not vice versa. Ambedkar himself repeatedly warned against a war with Muslims and said they are an explosive force which can blow up the fabric of the nation. He said nation must be governed by Nation cannot be governed by force all the time. And nation which has to be governed by force all the time is no nation, according to me. Our leaders speak in the name of Sardar and Ambedkar all the time, but have no time to understand them. Because Sardar had said, and I quote Sardar, Sardar said to all those, and surprisingly, very few people know that Sardar Patel was the one who was heading the Committee on Fundamental Rights and Committee on Minority Rights. And Sardar Patel says, when he presented the report on the minority rights, Article 25, 26, and 29, 30, he says, those who happen to be in majority, he warns us, the Hindus, those who happen to be in majority, please think about what minorities feel and how we in their position would feel if we were treated in the manner in which they are treated. Look at this man who is being worshipped with a tall statue. And every day is being forgotten. Every day minorities are facing the wrath. So, take for example religion. Framers were very clear. Speaker after speaker said that state should not identify itself with any religion. There must be complete freedom of religion, and we all have. We all have under Articles 25 and 26, freedom of conscience, freedom to profess whatever religion we want to profess. And I mean, we are very fortunate in this country that we have some of the most beautiful religions. Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Zoroastrianism, Islam, Hinduism, you name, I mean, they are so beautiful religions. They have all survived for, centuries, maybe thousands of years. But these framers were very clear. State should stay away from it. What do we see today? The state constantly identifying itself with a particular religion, building temples. I mean, this was the exactly thing which framers did not want the state to do. So, you may say today that, Nehru did not agree to contribute to Somnath temple's, Jirnodhar. But Nehru never said, he said, don't use state funds. You can raise funds, but don't use state funds, because state must be divorced from any particular religion. We all forget that Nehru spent 11 years in jail. No, you have to respect him for that alone. Everybody has faults, but look at the joys that Nehru gave us. He gave us a democracy which has survived till today. All these people who speak, in criticizing Nehru, forget one thing, that the foundation of democracy were laid by this great man. Many countries which became independent, when we became independent, lost their independence. In Southeast Asia, in Africa, in Latin America. But India's democracy, except for that 2 years period, and of course since 2014, has really stood the test of time. So, you have to you have to understand all this. Media is another where, why was media so important according to framers? Because we citizens have a right to receive information. It's not just media's right to, give the information. It is the converse, citizens' right to receive truthful information. Today, you have virtually bought over the media, because every day you find first 2 pages are of great leaders of this country, because they are being given for those 2 pages, crores and crores of rupees. Once you receive that, why would you criticize? It's very difficult temptation. So you then continue to, find every good thing about what is happening, and even if it is not good thing, you portray it as a good thing. And in small corner somewhere, Pratap Bhanu Mehta will, poor fellow, write and, tell us the truth. But is that enough? What I am trying to say is that enough? Look at the electronic media. I mean, it's worse. Print media at least has, Indian Express, has, Hindu, sometimes Times of India and Economic Times do put some good articles once in a while. There are some good vernacular newspapers like Gujarat Samachar, which is fiercely independent. Fiercely independent. despite the fact that one of its proprietors was arrested recently. But, so, media, which was supposed to be a, fourth estate, has failed completely. And framers wanted media to really play a great role. Supreme Court recognized it since 1950, right from the first day. So, look at the institutions. The framers, if you read Constituent Assembly debate on CAG, Controller of Auditor General, you will be astonished. They put CAG on the same platform as, same level as Supreme Court judges. They said the role of this CAG is so important for our society because governments will waste money. And in those days, they talked about thousands. Today, we are talking about thousands of crores. But those thousands also were worrying them that these thousands or lakhs should not be wasted. Today, our country can buy, planes worth thousands of crores of rupees for our leaders from public funds, so that our leaders can travel to 90 countries in the world. But is that how we should? Today, no politician travels in a commercial airline. You rarely see them. Most times they are traveling by chartered planes. Or they're private. Every government has bought private planes. Every government has bought helicopters. As if our ministers are so busy that they can't travel by road or by bus or by train. But at whose cost? I mean, we are still a poor nation. We are not a rich nation. We are not a rich nation. So, but, this is, CAG was specifically created. Look at Election Commission. Constitutional framers gave us, right to vote. Adult franchise was recognized as a basic right of every citizen. If you are a citizen above the age of 21 then, now it's reduced to 18, and if law has not declared you to be disqualified, then you are entitled to vote. Today we have to justify that I have a right to vote. Appear before Election Commission with a form and with some 100, supplements and say, sir, I am a citizen, please allow me to vote. And those Johnnies say, no, you are not a citizen because this is not tick marked. And Supreme Court is sitting, watching it. What a shocking thing. It's a fundamental right, it's a basic right of parliamentary democracy that every one of us has. Nobody can take it away, not this Election Commission. And framers were very clear. They wanted to create a fiercely independent Election Commission so that no political party can control it. Little did they know that by appointment process, the governments, of the time will be able to control them. We need more TN sessions, I suppose, to, but we can't find them, and we won't appoint them, even if we find them. On 25th November 1949, the last day of Constituent Assembly debate, Rajendra Prasad, who was the president of the Assembly and India's first president, warned that the work that confronts nation will be more difficult now than the past because, now see his words, because we did not have any conflicting claims to reconcile, no laws and fishes to distribute, no powers to share. Today we have everything. And that is why democracy is failing. Look at this man's words. He says the work that confronts nation will be more difficult than past because we did not have any conflicting claims to reconcile, no laws and fishes to distribute, no powers to share. Ambedkar's parting warning was, there is great danger of things going wrong. This man was a different planet. There is great danger of things going wrong. Times are fast changing. People, including our own, are being moved by new ideologies. They are getting tired of government by the people. They are getting tired of government by the people. They are prepared to have government for the people. We are having governments for the people. Those in power, their relatives, their families. This is exactly what Ambedkar had warned, that no. And he says, stand up, fight against this. Don't allow this country to have government, for the people. Let it be always a government by the people, of the people. This was his parting warning. But it was one member, Shyamanandan Sahai, who had very prophetic and dire words on that day. He says, we have now given to ourselves a constitution. We are now independent. But this is not the end of our troubles. It is the beginning of our troubles. And in 2026, we can certainly say that we have compounded those troubles manifold times. Constitution of India will survive, of course, in the textbooks and in the shelves. But its spirit is dying, if not dead. Thank you very, very much. I thank all of you for listening to me very patiently. It's been a great privilege. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Mr. Aspi CHINOÜ. I would have much rather preferred to sit there and listen to you rather than make you listen to what, But it's been a pleasure and privilege, Chairman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, all of you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for such a astounding lecture with no words minced. And we were all hanging to every word that was being said. It resonated, your concerns resonated with all of us. Now we have equally erudite remarks by the chair, Advocate Aspi CHINOÜ. I invite him to give his chair remarks.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Engineer, my friend Dushyant, a warrior par excellence. Unfortunately, the only grievance I have is that he stopped appearing in courts for people now. I think there's a level of frustration that got sent him. I am obviously a chair. I'm not going to repeat or de novo deal with a topic because Dushyant is covered like a panorama. But I want to use 10-15 minutes to talk of the elephant in the room, which everyone knows but does not acknowledge is there. Oh, sorry. Is that better? Yes? Can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry. So what I said was that
Just a second.
I can hold it. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so this is fine then. So I said I want to use my 10 or 15 minutes to talk of an elephant.
So chair also always needs some help.
When I looked at this topic, the Constitution is envisioned and its contemporary interpretation, it is typical legalese. It doesn't say what I think it wants to say, and which is that look where we are today and what's gone wrong. And I think it's very important that we realize just what is happening under our noses. Dushyant has outlined a series of things which are wrong, but they are peripheral. I'm going to say this again. I believe there is something far more fundamentally wrong, and I want to deal with that in 5-10 minutes. See, what we have seen from 1950 to 2025 is a transition from a democratic secular republic to an ethnocracy, to a republic of faith, under the eyes of judges and constitutions. And let me tell you that the change which you are witnessing is so fundamental that many of us prefer not to see it, because it is something that gets very difficult to live with and very difficult to stop. Constitutions, my friends, are words. And words, as Humpty Dumpty said in Alice, mean what I say they mean. And they change color. And constitutions do not preserve liberty, they do not preserve rights, they do not preserve freedom. Only people and the institutions can support it. I'll tell you just for a minute, we used to venerate, I remember when we were in law college and earlier, this American Constitution, its liberality, its freedoms. The best riposte to that came from Justice Black, where he said that this great American Constitution which you venerate kept my people in slavery for 300 years. So constitutions don't give you freedom. They embody what you must stand and fight for. And when you do not, the words are hollow. And that is today's situation. I want to just take a few minutes because I think it's important. We must realize how dire the position is. India started out as a constitutional republic based on civic citizenship, domicile, birth. It expressly disavowed cultural or religious antecedents as a basis of citizenship because of the complexity of the country. It has so many religions, so many castes, so many creeds, so many languages. If you were to get that country moving, you had to accommodate it into a plural constitution which was secular. Secular not in the Western sense of separation from church and state, but secular in the sense of neutrality and equal treatment of all religions. That is the Indian ethos. That is the Indian constitution. And that is how we started out. But make no mistake, while we had this constitution in 1950, there was another view of the world in India at that time. And that was the Hindu Rashtra ideology. It's not something new. It was from the 30s. It started with Savarkar, it went on to Gorwalkar, and let us be clear what they said. They said, India is a Hindu country, is a Hindu nation based on Hindu religion and culture. And Gorwalkar went further where he said, because he talked to Muslims, Parsis are less than elephants in India, so they don't count. But if you look at it this way, what he said was, Muslims must entertain no idea but those of glorification of the Hindu race or culture, may stain the country, but wholly subordinated to the Hindu nation. Now, this was the rival view. In 1950, because of the likes of Gandhi, who died before that but was instrumental, Nehru, Ambedkar and Patel, we opted out of this view. And we put up a nation, a brave nation, for all its contradictions, which sought to bring in principles of secular republicanism. Nehru, as my friend said, was the greatest architect of this. And right up to the 1970s, actually, Nehruvian philosophy saved India. It was a muddle. There were errors made. But the ultimate factor of developing a secular republic was preserved. And that's very important. Then we have this uncomfortable period of Mrs. Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, who played with these words. They, I do not think, were true secularists. They also were using groups and seeking to set them off one against the other for power. The problem is then life always betters this sort of genius wisdom of individual politicians. Look at what happened. Rajiv Gandhi brought in the Muslim Women's Bill to get over the Supreme Court judgment. Then he suddenly realized there was a huge backlash. So he decided, well, let's be brilliant. We'll open the gates of the Babri Masjid. Does anyone know that the gates were locked from 48 till Rajiv Gandhi, in his infinite wisdom, managed to get some magistrate in UP to open it for him. And he started his campaign in Faizabad and talked of Ram Rajya, little realizing the monster he was creating. The political fallout led inevitably to the destruction of the Babri Masjid. But you must remember, the BJP did not think that Ayodhya was a very important thing. For almost 2 years, they did not take it as a target. Somewhere an epiphany struck them that this can be used for political mobilization, and they clambered onto the baggage. Just remember I think at the time when the masjid was, or the Babri Masjid was demolished, the BJP had 3 members in parliament. We forget that. And also forget that the generality of views in India at that time, even after the demolition, was that it was a wrong thing. That was the general view. But look what happened in between. After the demolition of the Babri Masjid, Narasimha Rao, who I think was clearly culpable, there were those 4 hours where he was incommunicado while the masjid was being demolished. Because he was a brilliant man. He thought this will take care of the masjid and will allow me to demolish 4 state governments of the BJP. But such narrow-minded politics led to where we are today. When these 4 state governments were demolished by Narasimha Rao for supporting the Babri Masjid demolition, the Supreme Court in Bombay, 9 judges, laid down the highest pinnacle of secularism in India. And they went so far as to say, 10 minutes, I hope I'm not going to stretch now. They went so far as to say that a government which is non-secular deserves to be removed. No one ever thought what happened if the central government was non-secular, and who removes that? But that's the peculiarity of it. But shortly after that, remember what happened. The elections came in Bombay. The Shiv Sena especially campaigned heavily on Hindutva. The Bombay High Court struck down 12 of those elections, saying it is obviously a clear case of an attempt to use religion. It went to the Supreme Court. And in the Supreme Court, I think it was Justice Verma. He was sitting in Bombay as one of the 9 judges. When these appeals came up, he suddenly came out with this very interesting theory that Hinduism is a way of life. It's not a religion. And Hindutva is Hinduism. So that's also a way of life. So therefore, all these judgments of the Bombay High Court were reversed by Justice Verma. And there started the road to where we are today. Let's make no bones. The judiciary is culpable on 2-3 levels. 1, neglect and failure. And 2, actually enabling the situation we are in today. And they are intelligent men. They knew exactly what they were doing. I'm not ascribing motives, I'm looking at consequences. 2014, take it straight forward. The BJP now, I'm not going to the Vajpayee government because it was a different time. But 2014, the BJP comes to power on its own. And then follows a clear method of subversion of constitutional secularism and its replacement de facto by majoritarian ethnocracy. If we don't realize this, we are making a bigger mistake than the Germans made in 1933 and 34 when they saw the Weimar Republic collapse under us. And let me tell you something, gentlemen. It is common people who become the most dangerous in majoritarian governments. The Germans, when you look at them today, or you looked at them in 31, 32, didn't look the sort who would kill 6 million Jews. The Jews in Germany were the most educated, the scientists, the musicians, they were talented. But when nations are fed the madness of majoritarianism, sometimes called national socialism, sometimes called cultural nationalism, but it all means the same. You are using nationalism as a bogey boy to subvert nations. And that's what's happening under our noses. And our constitution no longer bears the sanctity it is. If I sound dismal, it is because the situation is dismal. Let me be very clear about it. Sorry, just 1 minute. My hands are not too great. Now, how has this happened? Just look at what's happened. From 2014 to today, the BJP does not have a Muslim legislator in parliament or even in the assemblies, I think. It just doesn't have it. You are seeing the virtual political exclusion of Muslims. It's so fundamental an issue. The Congress has a few, but the political role of the BJP is essentially the exclusion. And they have a simple answer. They say if we can mobilize the Hindus and we can make them vote for us, we don't need the Muslims. So let them vote against us. That's the way we are dealing with the situation. Then look at the total targeting of fraternization, which is even more frightening. Today, fraternization between Muslims and Hindus is almost dangerous. You get called love jihad. People come to your house. When you go to this under the Special Marriage Act and you have to announce a marriage, it's given to the local VHP or Bajrang Dal, who then come and make sure you can't get married. Where is fraternity today? Today, more and more, Muslims are being pushed into a corner and all interaction is being stopped. You can't put 20% or 14% of a country the size of India and with 200 million Muslims, with the second largest Muslim population in the world, into a corner. Somewhere this country will break if you take it too far. And then look at the last level. You pass all these laws in which you criminalize cattle slaughter, consumption and possession of beef. I see so many friends around us appalled at the lynching of Hindus in Bangladesh. Of course we should be. But what about the fact that more Muslims are being lynched in India for not saying Jai Shri Ram, for carrying beef? Does it not shock the conscience of people? What I'm more worried about is not our leaders, but I'm worried about our acceptance by the people to such things. Our acceptance by the people to the erosion of our democratic, secular, republic values. People and friends and colleagues say things I could never believe they would say. And when the political system becomes permissive, you then hear things you never heard before. This is almost frightening. And look at how this has happened. There is and was in the last 20 years a relentless propaganda blitz. It extols cultural nationalism and strength. Operation Sindoor, this, that. We must be strong. It only requires you to go out of the country to realize just how strong or how weak we are. I'm not saying we should not try to be strong, but strength is not muscle power. Strength is a nation united and working well together. That is the strength. This sort of strength is the type of strength which was shown when the Nazis took Czechoslovakia and they did this and everyone was so proud. You know, bus conductors in 1934 in Germany used to act like they were generals because they were all so proud of things. But this is like riding the tiger. At some stage it has to eat you up or it has to be eaten. Then the most problematic situation is equality and secularism has been treated as appeasement. And that is the most terrifying factor. If you support minority rights in any way, that's appeasement. If you go on the other side, that's astha. Look where we've come. We are today in a republic of faith and ethnocracy. Today, people justify everything by religion. And when you can't use the word religion because it might affect the constitution, you use culture. Culture today is a synonym and a face saver for religion. You can't say religious nationalism, so you say cultural nationalism. It is exactly this which our founding fathers wanted to prevent. Because when you have culture as the basis of a nation, culture necessarily with religion belongs to the dominant factor in that. And if you once allow culture to be the denominator, the nation is going to be in trouble. If you remember, I don't know, some days ago, months ago, Darius Kambata, who was then once our Advocate General, wrote, and I quote him, He said, these methods are not new. The Nazis brainwashed the Germans with propaganda, adopting Joseph Goebbels' doctrine of the big lie. They recalibrated the truth and history, demonized the Jews as being neither German or human, and accused the Weimar Republic of appeasement, the same word. Even after the Nuremberg citizenship laws were passed in 1933, Germans kept thinking, well, this is not really so bad. It's not going to get... Don't forget, the first concentration camp set up in Germany was in Dachau, and it was meant for Germans and not for Jews. It was meant for socialists. It was meant for leftists. It was meant for pastors. When majoritarian politics starts, it eats up everything in its way. And you are at the threshold when its appetite is really being whetted. So my purpose here is just saying how frightening the situation is, and while we live our little lives and we hope the storm will pass over us, I don't think it will. And either we realize the seriousness and push back in whatever way we can, or this storm will engulf us. I don't know, I'm obviously not going to take much more time, but I only want to say this, that look at the cynicism of this. All this is being done with the Constitution using the same words. But the words are hollow. And the Constitution has no meaning unless the institutions, the judiciary, the election commission, the CAG, and the people give it that support. You look at America today, it has this great constitution, but a majoritarian leader who says make America great again, really means make America white again, is doing exactly what Mr. Modi is doing here. At least there is some pushback there, but probably they had 200 years. We only have 50 years or 60 years, and our constitution floats on water. It doesn't have depth in the people. So, I'm sorry if I've overstayed my welcome, but I wanted to say that this is a very, very crucial matter. And what is more frightening than what is happening is the ability to not see what's happening. Because it's too difficult to deal with. So we live our comfortable lives by hoping it won't come home to us. But it always does. And either we find some way of dealing with this, of going back to the real constitutional values, or you are at the beginning of a storm, and you might not be like Louis XIV said, after me the storm. It might get you while you're alive. Thank you.
Very well.
Oh boy, did he really address the elephant in the room? Yes. Thank you so much for so eloquently speaking really about the transition, the fundamental change in our democracy and the very frightening transition that has taken place. I think these very sharp chair remarks has really got us thinking, and I think together the speaker and the chair have opened up, I think, a lot of questions in us. So I guess we are open to question and answers. We have, unfortunately, only 15 minutes. So we will take one round of questions and then one more round if there is time. So I see some hands up. Okay, this is going to be difficult. Questions will have to be really one-liner, and questions, I'm sorry, there'll be no time for remarks, and really in 1 minute. 1 minute, this is really difficult. 1, 2, 3, 4, and just 4 questions as of now. Starting there. The gentleman with red specs. No.
Considering its current fragility, what do you think is the future of the Places of Worship Act? How long do you think it can work as a scaffolding for the secular fabric of our country? Or is the scaffolding already been removed?
No, I think it would be. If you have judges like, former Chief Justice Chandrachud, then that act is really worth a piece of paper. Because having been party to the Ayodhya judgment, which said that that law is sacrosanct. That judge had a, I don't know how he permitted, service and repairs and excavations in Mathura and other places. Yeah, so, it all depends on the judges. And, I have, honestly, it's not that I disrespect judiciary, but I have very little respect left for these kind of judges. And there are quite a few of them.
Yeah, we have a great constitutions, but see the illiteracy rate in our country. No education. They can't read us great constitutions. So education is a must. So it helps to bring light in the life of the man. So why we are still backward in education? So what we can do to increase the education in our country?
See, I have always believed in a lighter vein that our politicians want us to remain poor and illiterate. That's the only way they can remain in power. But, we have made great strides, for example, in Kerala and West Bengal. The other states have to follow. So I don't know whether you read this or not, but a shocking figure was presented to Parliament a couple of months ago, which said that as many as some 66 lakh children left the schools last year from government schools.
Yeah.
And Gujarat had the highest rate, 28% of children left the government schools.
So
you can imagine what is happening.
Yeah, that is the problem that we face.
No comments, please, just questions.
दवे सर, मैं संजय रोकड़े हूँ, पीछे हूँ. मेरा आपसे सवाल है, दवे सर से रिक्वेस्ट है. ये कॉलेजियम का जो सिस्टम है जुडिशरी में, अभी जो यूजीसी का जो डिसीजन आया, तो अगर कभी ये नहीं होता तो क्या ये डिसीजन आता?
See, frankly, if you look at the two definitions in this amendment, the old and new, both use the word caste. And this amplifies little more the new amendment. I don't see why Supreme Court should have really stayed it, honestly, frankly, because ultimately the whole idea is that discrimination of every kind must be stopped. And that's what the UGC regulations provide. So they are not to protect one community against the other community. They are to protect all students against any kind of discrimination in the institutions. So I don't think, judges really have grasped it. I mean, it looked like as if, UGC had made some great, attack on the rights of the higher caste and that they were benefiting the, Dalits and others. I don't look at it that way. If you look at both the definitions carefully, you will find that there is not much of the new definition only amplifies in respect of the Dalits. But that was not even necessary by UGC, the existing definition. But collegium system has destroyed judiciary across the country, so that is a matter of fact, and that's a matter which we'll have to ponder later on.
Sir, Amali here. Sir, I have a question about the strength of judges, Supreme Court and High Courts. So can we increase strength of judges in the Supreme Court and High Court, so which will help us to get better disposal of any judges and matters in the High Court pending
the ratio of judges, per capita ratio of judges is one of the lowest in India in the world. We need to have more judges, we need more legal infrastructure, but it's not going to happen. The executive doesn't want a strong judiciary. So they are not going to really have it. And I think we'll have to wait. But question is not that. Question is, even if we have more judges, will we have better judges? That's the question. See, let us not blame judges. This society as such is not able to produce people with good character, good value system, and courage and strength. It's nothing, as Aspi rightly pointed out, that we are all failing. So judges don't come from Mars and Moon, they come from us. If we have failed, judiciary is bound to fail. So we can't blame them alone. This lady has a question. Yeah.
One thing about...
You have a question? No. First of all, you must understand that no government wants an efficient judiciary. Sorry.
how does... So what? The first response I must give you is that you must remember that no government, not the BJP alone, wants an efficient judiciary. Because the only place where they are answerable is in court. Why would you make your trial go quickly? Why would you bring your conviction fast? Because the easiest thing you can do is double or triple the number of judges. Why don't you do it? Because you don't want to do it. All this rubbish about ease of business and courts coming in the way, you don't want an efficient judiciary. And there is another big problem which you must understand. It's the salaries. You see, judicial salaries are equated with executive salaries, ministerial salaries. Unfortunately, ministers don't live on their salaries, but judges are expected to live on their salaries. And that creates a big complication. No, a district judge gets, I think, 3 lakhs or something, take home. An junior minister gets that. But the junior minister lives on 1,000 times that. And the district judge is asked to live on 3 or be corrupt. So look at the situation we are in. We need 10 times these judges. We need better paid judges. But this is symptomatic of a larger malaise. Sorry.
Yeah, my point was this, that, there's this old saying that a country gets or a people gets a government that it deserves, So that is what it comes down to, that the fault lies in us, the people at a larger level. So where do you see the remedy for that?
Madam, unfortunately, the majority of most countries are not liberal. It's we who think they are. The majority of most countries are also closed in terms of religion, community, caste and creed. It requires leaders of vision like Nehru, like Gandhi, like Patel to overcome that and show an aspiration which is higher. Absent that leadership, unless something miraculous happens, we are in for trouble.
Hello? Hello?
I will add to that kind of a awakening which Shankaracharya brought, for example, or Vivekananda brought. Those were the leaders who could do it. I have always felt, I don't know, I may be wrong, but parents and teachers play a great role. And today, I think both are failing. So that is something which, we were very lucky to have great parents. And today, there is a great responsibility on parents and teachers to, imbibe the value system in the children.
We have 2 questions and time only for 2 questions. One coming from very young friends there.
This gentleman wants to ask. Quickly ask a question. No.
Since the elections are clearly hijacked these days, when do you think this reign of terror and inequality will end, and how will it end?
Look, I don't know whether elections are hijacked or not, but the elections are definitely influenced by various considerations. But I don't think there is likely to be any change in this country in a foreseeable future. I don't see any change. Equality, etc., will only remain dreams in this country. They will never become reality. Not at least in our lifetimes. The young people may perhaps be able to do something. I don't know. No, we will not. Fortunately, no, I don't think we will be heading for a concentration camp, but certainly, the marginalization will continue.
And the ghettoization. The ghettoization, the marginalization, and the cornering will continue, and it's going to get a lot worse before it can get better.
Yeah. And I must say that, people speak about Congress party and all, but even Congress party doesn't want to stand up and speak about love jihads and all that. What is this? Are you going to imprison love now? Are you going to tell who should fall in love with whom? These are all, first you say don't eat beef, now you say don't fall in love, tomorrow don't stay here. I don't know what they will say now. You stop thinking also, they might tell, I don't know what they want to do.
Okay, very last question.
All right. Sir, as a second-year law student who just started reading constitutional law, something perplexed me very much, which was how Article 143 was invoked just after the governor's judgment came out, the division bench judgment came out, and the subject matter was almost entirely about the division bench judgment. That was, and how that works out at the end, and now what do the Supreme Court judges do in regards to what do they do? Do they follow the division bench judgment, or now the...
No, as I am very clear, the judgment of the Supreme Court, Justice Partiwala's judgment, is the law of the land. The advisory opinion is not definitely binding on anybody. It's an advisory opinion to the President. Frankly, the government sought that opinion because it was afraid to go for review and curative petition. So they found this indirect way of getting over the judgment. But I think Justice Partiwala's judgment stands. And we'll have to wait and watch when he becomes Chief Justice.
So, just one question if I may ask you. I am a law student. At the at the risk of sounding obnoxious and utopian, but I personally feel that if in India, if there is any way, either through a PIL, either through suo motu jurisdiction, that the entire judiciary, like for example in Delhi, where we do not have a ceiling on court fees, and to a certain set of cases, like commercial suits for example, which run into thousands of crores, if we can have a certain percentage which directly goes to the judiciary and the judiciary doesn't pay the treasury, that the judiciary's finances are independent, completely independent of the central government. And if some sort of a setup can be made, and using those funds the number of judges can be increased, can it be done?
I don't think so. As Aspi rightly said, you need a very big organizational structure. And it requires, we can only do it with the help of the government. We can't do it without the help of the government. Judiciary itself can't do it.
Strength of courts can't be increased by courts,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Courts are gods without a machine. The machine is the government.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. This would be the last question, and I invite Advocate Irfan Engineer, the Director of CSSS, to propose a vote of thanks.
It is my pleasant duty to propose a vote of thanks. What an evening we had. We all need to give a large applaud to today's speaker as well as chair. They didn't mince word. They didn't couch it in any diplomatic language. They were straight, and their message was that we have to wake up. We have to do something. We can't depend on any political party. We can't depend on any institution. We can't depend on any other factor. We have to stand up. We, the citizens, will have to spread awareness of what is happening. And the message was that we are riding a tiger. It will consume those people also who think that they are safe, or that it is other people who are under attack. And if you want an example of that, Swami Avimukteshwar Anand, the Shankaracharya, tasted it. And I don't know, others are down the line. So we need to create this awareness. Thank you, Dave Saab, for this brilliant lecture. It was very pleasant and very easy coordinating with him for this lecture. Let me also tell you, he has not accepted anything. He has traveled on his own, with his own resources. He is here on time, without any worry for us. Thank you, Advocate Aspi CHINOÜ Saab, for chairing it so well and speaking and drawing our attention not only to legalities, but also directly to political ideology, the elephant in the room, which we have to fight, which we have to deal with. Thank you. Thank you, Wahid Mukadam Saab. Wahid Bhai. He's from Boston.
He's a scientist. He has come from US. He didn't come for this. He was here and we took advantage because he was friend of Dr. Asghar Ali engineer. Whenever he went to US, there would be meetings arranged in Boston for him. So we asked him to, and he gave a very personalized account. Today's audience has been wonderful. The number of questions they ask, young. Let me thank the law students first, and for airing the concerns that we have. They are our hope, and they are our hope for future. We had lawyers, number of lawyers. Mihir is not here, senior advocate Mihir, senior advocate Majid Menon is also not there. Justice Gokhale, he came, as the message went to Justice Gokhale, he immediately said, I'm coming, and he's here. And the activists, the intellectuals here, we had a law professor from law department. A lot of people came, and the hall was full actually. So thank you all, the audience, for being here. I thank the YASHVANTRAO CHAVAN Center for making this available to us. Many people asked us whether this lecture is on after what happened the 3 days ago. We asked YB Chavan Center whether there will be any difficulty. There was none. There was good cooperation with them, from them. Thank you to Malik Saab, who is video recording all this. The journalists who have come. Thank you, Bishop Ravi Kumar. He has come all the way from a distant central suburb to listen to this lecture. And thank you to CSS staff that has been working, Kishore, Rajat, Dawood, Sandeep, Dia, and of course all of us as a team. We have been working, mobilizing, getting the information across about the lecture, and thank you all. Thank you very much.
Just say one, that is for the young generation. There's a lovely words of a song that I used to love when I was young in the 70s, which is very apt to what Irfan Bhai said. Now is the time to set things right. We don't need a revolution. We just need to open our eyes. I can't sing, so otherwise I would have sung.